I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings,
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
All right, welcome back to the Bodybuilding Legends Podcast, and I have three very special guests with me today. Going around the bend here, we got Mr. Phil Williams, who was the 1985 NPC Nationals champion and also the 1988 Chicago Pro champion. And then we got Tony Pearson, who was the 1978 AAU Mr. America winner, and he also went on to win the NABA Mr. Universe and Mr. World. And finally, we got Tom Terwilliger, who was the 1986 NPC Nationals Light-Heavyweight champion, spent many years as a pro and won the Niagara Falls Pro Show. So welcome to the show, guys. Good to have you guys back on the show.
Good to be on, John.
Great, thank you.
Very good.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right, Tony, let's start with you. I saw something about that book you did called Driven, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
they're making a documentary about that. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's my life story. You know, I was raised in the Deep South and in the 60s and the civil rights and all that stuff. So it's not really about bodybuilding. Of course, it's a part of the book, but it's really about a troubled life and how to survive it and not get caught up in drugs and crime. And I mean, I could be dead. So it's a survival story. And the reviews are pretty good. And the documentary, we went down to Memphis, Tennessee, and I had to go back and retrack everything I did growing up as a child. Imagine that. We went to all of those spots, very emotional ride. And I think it turned out really well. The producer seemed pretty happy with what I had to do. You know.
How did you get that going, Tony? How did you get a documentary going?
Well, what happened was Eric the Trainer, you know Eric the Trainer?
Yeah.
From Hollywood, a good friend of mine. He comes over, he works out with me in Vegas. Every time he comes over, he wants to train with me. And then he goes to my massage guys. He's got his routine down. So one day he brought this guy who lives in Vegas, Steve. He said, "Hey, this is my friend Steve." And we started talking. I started training Steve. And then we realized that he knew somebody very special, Joita's daughter. And she owns a Tequila Mockingbird production company in LA. She read my book a couple of times and she said, "We got to do this. We need to do this one." And she jumped on it really, really seriously. And I was like, "Whoa, okay, I'm excited." That's how it began. It just word of mouth. I mean, Steve knew her and she contacted me and it was on, you know. So it's a great story for a lot of people, even adults who are dealing with childhood issues that they never resolved.
Right.
Or kids who are in trouble today, which is a lot of kids. You know, the suicide rate is the highest it's ever been in this country for kids because they're lost and they're alone, they're lonely, they have no direction, they have no support. Single parents, you know, in a household, or they're being abused, or just a lot of things. And she said, "This is a great story to reach out and help people in general. And you survived." She said, "I can't figure out how you survived, but you did." And that was the meaning. That's why we did the book. So we went to Memphis and we interviewed my family. And then we went on to St. Louis, my old high school. We go back there and where I grew up, the house there. And we went to George Turner. You know George Turner, right? Somebody.
Yeah.
We actually went to his gravesite and we filmed there. And I was actually talking to George, you know, because he helped so many people. He was a bad guy, tough guy, crazy guy, but deep down, he really tried to help people. And I was one of those lucky kids. You know, the first day of this gym, he came over and says, "Hey, I'm going to train you." I think I was 18 years old. And from that point on, you know, he trained me every day for about 9 months and just tried to kill me. And then, you know, I decided to go to California. So we went to George's graveside. We went to my old high school, the old house I grew up in. just a lot of stuff that I had to actually relive. And it's weird going back to that. We're talking 45, 50 years of stuff that you kind of pushed away. You forget about it. It's all tucked away, but it's really not. We carry all this trauma around with us every single day. That we put on a nice face. Everyone has a great face. Deep down, there's issues. And so this book kind of helped me a lot to heal. On the good days, writing the bad stuff, there was a lot of tears. And then on the fun days, like I won a title, that's a lot of fun to write about, or I get to travel somewhere around the world. That was fun. But it was funny how emotionally it all comes back. And I went to Memphis, a lot of stuff came back that I totally forgot about because I'm standing in the spot where it happened. Yeah, so this is Memphis, St. Louis. And then we finished in LA when my old apartment, my first apartment I had in LA. We went there, we went down to Muscle Beach, of course. We went to both Ghost Gym, the one in Santa Monica and 2nd Street and Broadway, Santa Monica, and then the original Ghost Gym, and then, the Ghost Gym as it is today. So we went all three places and then down on the beach, Venice Beach, just to kind of sum it up to coming from where I came from. Down in the South in the 60s, it was tough.
Yeah.
I was a child. Civil rights was going on. I was in the middle of it, but I was living in a nightmare in my own house.
Yeah, I know.
There was no escape anywhere. So
yeah, it was unbelievable. That book was unbelievable when I read it. Did you guys read it, Tom and Phil?
Appreciate it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I haven't had an
Hey,
opportunity
you were
to
driven.
do so, for sure.
I appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah, you were driven, man.
But I just want to tell kids out there, you can survive. It's a mindset.
Yeah.
You watch all these crime stories, and the guy says, "Well, I killed 20 people because I was beat up as a child." No, you made a decision to do that. You decide what you want to do. You don't have to be like that. Like my dad was crazy, and I said to myself, "I'll never be like my dad."
Yeah.
I made that decision. It's not passed down. It's you blame somebody else. It's never your fault, but it is your fault. You did it. You have to blame it. You have to own it.
Right.
So I just, I was fortunate to have George in my life because he became like a father to me. I didn't have a father. I didn't have a mother. I had no one. And I was tortured. So George was like a father. I was terrified of him. But, it helped me a lot. And he conditioned me. He said, "You go into California. It's going to be rough out there." And I look back now, I go, George is right. Got me ready for the fight, for the battle.
Yeah.
And so it's a story, and I try to take you back. I actually try to put you in Venice, how it was in the 70s. All the afros and the music and the energy. The bodybuilding was so new at the time that people just couldn't get enough of it. They would stand around that weight pit down in Venice and just watch for hours. Just watch us work out,
Yeah.
They're coming from all over the world, Sweden, Germany, all these places, just to see the bodybuilders in person. Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's crazy. I just did an interview with Mark Martinez, and he's got that documentary coming out, and he goes back to the 70s, and that's how it was. It was like bodybuilding was so fascinating because it was like so new for everybody. And nobody now, of course, muscles are accepted. Everybody works out. It's a totally different thing. But back then it was really unique and really, really fascinating for everybody.
Yeah, but the only place that was like that was Venice, California. Because I'm from St. Louis, and they thought I was a freak of the year. He's out every day. He wants to build his muscles. What's wrong with this guy? You need to get a job. So the situation in St. Louis was not great, but I kept hearing about California, and I kept seeing the magazine. I saw the pictures. I was watching Arnold on ABC Wide World of Sports when he won Mr. Olympia. About 2 years in a row, I was watching this stuff. Go, oh man, I got to go to California. And I think part of that too was kind of an escape too. I was running from the book, if you know what I mean. I was escaping part of that too. But I realized you can't escape it, because I got to California, and that first year I would wake up cold sweat every other day, thinking I was being tortured again. 2,000 miles away, she still had a hold on me.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that's how deep. It's really deep. But somehow, like I said, I survived. And then, Robbie kind of helped me out. But in those days, you got to prove yourself. These guys were serious. I remember I went to the Gold's Gym for the first time, Pacific Avenue. I had just arrived. I got about $10 in my pocket. I walked into Gold's. I sat in the corner. I watched these guys train. Joe Weider was training. He was taking photos of Frank Zane that day.
Mm-hmm.
And then Robbie, Manuel Perry, Danny Padilla, Kenny Waller, you name it, they were all there. And I was just sitting there going, oh my God. Like a 19-year-old, eyes as big. Oh my God. But then I said to myself, if I train hard enough, I think I could be like those guys. You know what I mean? I don't know, something inside of me just kept saying, it's going to be a lot of work, but I believe that I could. Then I got distracted. I was starving, trying to figure out where I'm going to sleep, what I'm going to eat, and all this stuff. And then Arnold comes over, and a couple of months later, about 3 months in, he comes over and he goes, I've been watching you for months working out here. On Muscle Beach, it's 100 degrees. I'm squatting 400 pounds, 10 sets of 10. That's all I knew. Whatever George taught me, that I was continuing to do it. 10 sets of 10, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with a training partner. And I didn't know Arnold was watching. And he says, you got a great potential. You're going to be the champion. I could use his voice. And then he says, he sent him to see Joe Weider for the first time. But so that's what was a turnaround for me to say, see, this is what kids need. They need somebody, maybe just one person that can inspire them, to lead them down a good path, not the game banging and all this crazy stuff, drugs and alcohol, but somebody's doing something positive.
Yeah.
And once I got to LA, that was Arnold. How did I get into bodybuilding? I met Muhammad Ali in 1973, walking down the street in St. Louis. And this limousine pulls up in front of a high school. And I said, oh, you got to be the president of the United States, the police escort, everything. So I ran as fast as I could to get to this car. I got to see who gets out. Muhammad Ali gets out. So 1973, he's the current champion. Dressed in his blue suit like a superhero god. His muscles was this big. And I'm looking up at the champ. So, oh my God. So that was the first time I thought about fitness. Every day I'd lived for 12 years, am I going to die today? That was in my head.
Wow, no kidding.
And starving. I didn't get any food. So, but Ali sent me in the right direction. I said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm too slow. I'm too small, but I was strong. I couldn't run. I couldn't play football. Forget it. Boxing, please. But I was very strong. My friend says, man, go to the wrestling team. Go out for the wrestling team. You're very strong. And I did. So I make the team. So that's how, but all you need is one person that is going to inspire you.
Did you talk to Ali on that day?
I did. Yes. And I met him again a few years later after I had just won in America and I had the book in my hand. So
really?
The book, yes. He wasn't the guy that I thought you were going to see on TV because he's always in the mic and he's yelling. He's super quiet.
Huh, really?
Very reserved guy. He talked very softly and he was very nice and he loved people. He had an entourage with him. Everybody stopped. Him and Veronica, his wife, Veronica. Everything stopped. He stopped in front of me, signed my book, and talked to me. And I was like, whoa, with an entourage standing behind him. So he loved the fans. He was a people's champion, that's for sure. So
What did he say to you when you were a kid, Tony?
He asked me, when I was a kid, I said, can I shake your hand? He goes, yeah. And then I said, what the mistake that I made, he went into the high school and I should have followed him in. Yeah. I mean, you're going to sit and talk to the kids for an hour. That's what he did,
Oh, okay.
So he didn't say very much. He just smiled and shook my hand and I walked to the door and that was about it. But like I said, a few years later, I actually got to meet him. Went to a party on the Queen Mary in Long Beach because, he was in the Olympics. He won the gold medal. Yeah. And Wilma Rudolph was a track star also. She won gold medal. So they were good friends. He was having a party for her. Houston McTeer was the fastest man in the world. Olympic champion, 1976. Houston McTeer, who's passed on. I was good friends with him from Santa Monica College. And he goes, hey, man, you want to go to an apartment on the Queen Mary with Ali? I go, yeah. But twice in my life, I get to meet Muhammad Ali. So yeah, that was a thrill. But like I said, this is what kids need today. Someone to inspire them, to motivate them. And you got to really choose your friends very carefully. because you're influenced, especially with social media. We didn't have any of that. So, but still, you got to make sure you hang around good people. And I was lucky to be around the gym. I was a young kid with all the champions. All these guys are 10 years older than I am. So I was a young kid hanging around. But like I said, you got to prove yourself to them. So I had to win a few titles first before they would say, hey, you want to work out? You want to go hang out? Yeah. So it was like a little group, about 15, 20 guys that really kind of started bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Because in the mid 70s, it was still like taboo. You do what,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? There was no real exposure on television. You wait for the magazine every 6 weeks to come out. You pray to God that you're in it.
Right.
You don't have a picture and you're nobody. So
Right.
that was the only publicity you're going to get. So I don't know, looking back, I don't know. Leaving St. Louis, it was something I felt I had to do.
Mm-hmm.
But going back just now, reconfirm I did the right thing.
Yeah.
I always questioned it. I left my sister. You read the book and she was upset. But I went back to St. Louis. I went back to Memphis and I go, I did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
I did the right move I could have ever made. But it's terrifying when you're going out to a place 2,000 miles away from home. You don't know anyone and you're broke.
Yeah. They took a lot of balls for you to do that, especially at that young of an age.
And you're a kid and had no experience in life.
You didn't know anybody out there or anything.
No one. But what I'm saying, I was sheltered. I didn't have any friends growing up. I wasn't allowed to have a friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wasn't taught anything. I didn't have a dad. I didn't have a mom. So I was very naive when I arrived in LA. Very.
Yeah.
And I didn't talk much. I just kept my mouth shut because I didn't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'd win a show. I didn't smile. It's like,
Yeah.
There's a video of me. Wayne Gillash just put it on Instagram that when I won Mr. Venice Beach, there's an actual video of we have it.
Oh, really? Wow.
Never seen it before, and just recently. And I had my head down the whole time. I went, I raised my hand, I walked off the stage. It's the camera still following. I had my head down. I went back into the weight pit. I said my head was down the whole time. I never looked up. That's what I was taught to do as a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was 19, but I'm still a child. So it was a tough road, and the documentary is, I think, pretty much done. I think it should be out the end of September.
Oh, really? Okay.
October, yes.
Where will it be released?
I don't know. Teresa is, Joe Weider's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to get it on Netflix or Amazon or,
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's about an hour and a half long. It's about 2 hours long now.
Yeah.
It has to be cut down to about an hour and a half.
Right.
There is a lot of twists and turns in this one.
Yeah.
Believe me, I went back to a cotton field and I actually taped in a cotton field. You read in the book.
Wow.
So to be standing in the cotton field in Memphis, Tennessee at my age going, I'm a child again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Psychologically. And I got deadly ill after that. Flying from St. Louis back to Vegas, I was really, really sick. Like my nerves, my whole system pretty much shut down.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it really, really took a toll on me. For 3 weeks, I didn't think I was going to make it.
Wow. No shit. Damn.
Yeah. I've never been so sick in my life. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
Just from all the stress of going back.
Yeah, it all came back.
Yeah. Wow.
When you read about it, it's kind of like a story to read, but when you're actually there,
Yeah.
this is what happened. Yeah. So.
Wow. Well, I can't wait to see it. I'm glad that's amazing you got that done, because I remember when you were talking about doing the book,
Right.
now you did the book and it touched a lot of people, it affected a lot of people. And now it's just by chance, by circumstance, and now there's a documentary. So that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. I feel blessed to have that. And I mean, what are the chances of meeting Eric the trainer, which I met in Muscle Beach? He's a wonderful guy. This is the most nicest guy I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Helping everybody. He's always in a good mood.
Right.
And his friend Steve, who lives here in Vegas, and he goes, hey, he knows Joe Weider's daughter. I go, and she has a production company. And she read the book a couple of times. She said, I had to read this again.
Mm-hmm.
And because it just takes you, it's not, like I said, it's not about bodybuilding. People, it's a bodybuilding. No, it's not. It's about life.
Yeah.
hard life. And I think most people have had a tough life growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And some, you know what I mean?
A lot of
Yeah.
people relate to it. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a blessing, you know, and
Mhm.
somehow I survived. And I look back now, well, how did I survive that? I'd never had a plan. I didn't plan anything. I'm just,
Right.
when I went to LA, I didn't have a plan. Just get on the bus and go.
Yeah.
I said to my friend, we'll figure that out when we get there.
Yeah.
That's what kids do, you know.
Right.
We have no fear. The only
Right,
time
right.
he had fear when he packed his bag and went back to St. Louis because he couldn't take it.
Right. I remember
So
that.
after 10 days, he's gone. Then the fear came.
Yeah. Because now you're by yourself.
I went straight to the hospital because I was having a heart attack.
Wow, really?
Yes, the nurse said you're physically healthy.
Wow.
What's going on in your life? And I told her, and she said, yeah, you're hyperventilating. You know, you'll be fine. But yeah, I was like, that's when the fear came, when you got $9 left in your pocket and your friend just left you. And I had no idea what Muscle Beach was. I'm downtown LA in the ghetto. You know, it's tough down there.
Mm-hmm.
And after 10 days, I jumped on the bus with my $9 and I said, I'm going to go wherever this bus takes me. That's where I'm going to go. So in downtown LA, you got 1,000 buses. You can go to Pasadena, to the Valley, you name it, in Woodland Hills, anywhere.
Right.
I got on the right bus. I got on the bus that was going to go from downtown to Beverly Hills. And that was the last Rodale Drive and Santa Monica Boulevard. Last stop, he said. I get off, I'm looking around, and I saw Richard Burton. You know who Richard Burton is?
No.
The actor, Richard Burton.
Oh, Richard, yeah, the one who married
to Elizabeth Taylor, right?
Right.
I saw him walking from the mansions.
No way.
across Santa Monica Boulevard, going to the shops.
Right.
And I went, Richard Burton. I'm in Beverly Hills. Is what I said to myself. I'd have as clueless. We didn't have a TV, so I didn't know anything about Hollywood or any of that stuff. So there was a kid sitting on the bench, big afro, 70s, man. He was cool. He was a typical LA guy. Young guy. What's up, my brother? You know how we talk in the 70s. And he goes, you are pretty buffed. You need to go down to Muscle Beach. That's where all the guys work out, man. And I go, yeah, that's where I need to go. So he's gave me the address. He said, this is where you just take this bus, get off at 2nd Street, Santa Monica. And that's how I made it to Venice.
Wow.
But this one kid sitting at a bus stop, and there was chaos because of the traffic in Beverly Hills. Come on. But everything went quiet when he started to speak to me. It was silence. I didn't hear any noise. It was just a voice speaking to me.
Yeah.
So I go, it's a divine intervention here somewhere. I mean, what are the chances of getting on the right bus, the kid at the bus stop, and then get to Venice and get to witness the real pros at the time, 1976. I think it's just before the Olympia. It was getting ready for them because these guys were really training. I wrote in the book how there was no one talking.
Yeah.
No one drinking water. I mean, they were just very, very intense. You could feel the energy. It was a small gym, it's a compact gym. And the guy behind the desk, I think was Dan Howard.
Mm-hmm.
He was a manager at the time. And after 30 minutes or so, go, what the hell are you sitting in the corner? Get over here. So I'm nervous and shaking, oh boy. And I asked him if I could work out for the day. No. Is Arnold here? No, it's Kenny Waller. And I looked over and I saw Ken Waller. Because George told me to go talk to Ken Waller. Maybe he can help you.
Right. Because he went to George Turner's gym.
Right. He trained there as well.
Yeah.
But he looked so massive and so thick and so mean. And I said, no way. I'm going to go near that. I didn't go near him. He was like, he was sitting on a little stool, his shoulder was this wide.
Yeah.
You know how thick Ken Waller was?
Yeah, he was huge back in the day.
He was huge. But he's very intimidating. I didn't go near him. But I survived through that, and they threw me out of the gym. That's right. He goes, you don't have any money. You can't buy a membership. You have to leave. We can't have you hanging around the gym, he said. I took my little suitcase, and there I was. And then I went down to Muscle Beach, and the crowd was crazy. The boardwalk was crazy. Recently I just went to Venice, and it's so sad now.
I know. That's what I heard.
All the homeless people, and it's never going to be the same again.
Yeah.
It was a really fun time and atmosphere. You had dancers, you had rollerblading, the roller skating thing going on, music blasting, people, comedians down there, people in costumes. It was just like that I saw on television back in St. Louis. Oh my God. And to be a part of that. And then you went down to the Muscle Beach, and it was packed. The weight was full of people, guys working out, very serious about their training.
Yeah.
And all the fans are just like eyes as big, staring back and forth at these guys. Oh my God, look at all this. It was like a different world.
Yeah.
I had been in another world, because in St. Louis there was nothing going on. Nothing going on. It's amazing. So that's how it all happened.
Yeah. It's sad when we talk about those old days of bodybuilding. That's all I do on this podcast, but it seems like it is gone. Like those magical days are gone. It's just everything's different. I mean, time changes, things move on, and
right.
Like you said, Phil, you thought it was going to be like that forever, and
it's not.
It's
not.
No,
changed.
Yeah.
No, bodybuilding was new, and it was, I think people thought it was obtainable after a while.
Yeah.
Because we were big, but not so big.
Yeah.
The class of physique they have today, but they don't realize back in those days, we had a lot of muscle on our frames. Small bone structure, small waist, small hips, a lot of meat packed on.
Yeah.
The shape and the definition, and you know what I mean? So even when I saw those guys training that day, and their arms looked like they were 22-inch, everyone had a 22-inch arm. I said, oh my God. and a stone face. But I still said to myself, I think I could someday.
Yeah, you're right. It did seem more attainable. And I think that's what motivated so many of us when we were young and we started off and reading the magazines.
Yes.
All those guys did look unbelievable. You did have that feeling like, if I work hard enough, I could do this too. I could look like that.
Yes, and exactly what I said to myself. And watching on TV, the first time I saw bodybuilding on television, I was impressed with muscles, but I was impressed with the art form.
Yeah.
I'm more of an artist.
Yeah.
Because this guest poser for St. Louis, he came out and he had a spotlight, and from pose to spot, we go dark, spotlight, spot. You know what I mean? And the spotlight. And I'm sitting there, oh my God, this is art.
Yeah.
Sculpting their own bodies.
Yeah.
Watching Arnold and Robbie and Muhammad Makawi and Danny Padilla and White World of Sports. And I look at the structure of their bodies. Look at the muscles.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about it. But instinctively, I said, this is art. And I want to be an artist. I'm going to sculpt myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, you want a big arm, you want a big chest and all this stuff, but that was not, I never wanted to be big.
Yeah, it was more than that.
Big enough to win. That's all I said.
Yeah.
I think, some people's bodies are made for the stage and some people's bodies are made for the gym.
Yeah, that's true. There's gym bodies and stage bodies, right? I know.
Great bodies at the gym. You put them on stage, you go, what happened to the guy?
Right.
because nothing's in balance, nothing flows, legs too short, long torso, wide waist, this, and this.
Yeah.
Then the other guy, you look at the gym, it looks like nothing. That would be me. Over in the corner, sweating and grinding it out. And then on the stage to go, where did they come from?
Yeah, exactly.
I used to have people run backstage and go, was that you out there? I look so small. So, it depends on your structure and your balance and proportion.
Yeah.
And your hips and your waist.
Absolutely.
And how well you present it.
Yeah, I like what you said about the art form. Tom, you had that similar experience, right? When you saw Ed Corney pose at that pumping iron premiere in 1977.
Can you hear me okay? I'm not even sure my mic is working. Yeah, okay, good. It's working. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I totally resonate with what Tony is saying. In fact, it was a very similar experience for me back in New York, because it was the 70s and I began as well. I won my first teenage show in 78. And I was sort of stumbling into a gym that was the equivalent of Gold's Gym in Long Island, New York. In fact, it was the predominant bodybuilding gym. Tony Pandolfo, Steve Mahalik, Mr. America trained there. Joe Nazario, who went on to turn pro, and all these other guys. I mean, everybody in this gym was serious, man. And I walked in there as a 15 or 16-year-old kid at the time. just started lifting, watching these guys, looking at these guys in the magazines, exactly what you were talking about, those black and white photos in Muscle Builder magazine and Iron Man magazine from Artie Zeller, who was photographing all those guys you were talking about, Padilla and Arnold and Franco, you know. And so I that was my first experience with that. And then walking into that gym, you know, and I think I've shared, and maybe you had the same experience. It must have been like that at Gold's because it was such a small environment. And so was this Future Man gym in Long Island. Couldn't have been more than, I don't know, 2,500 square feet. Wasn't big. Right. Packed with equipment. Guys in there, and the first thing you experience when you walk through the door as a novice, as a kid, is the aroma. Because you remember Tony, remember Phil? I mean, everybody back then was like Ben Gay. Ben Gay. And then there was the vomit, of course, and the sweat. And nobody washed their clothes. I mean, like the sweat. It was like everybody wore gray. In California, it was a little different. It was a lot of shorts and t-shirts and tank tops. In New York, everybody just wore gray Champion sweatsuits, you know, sweatshirts that were just like brown stained everywhere, you know. But to go back to your point, John, was my first experience ever seeing a bodybuilding. It wasn't even a bodybuilding competition. It was actually the opening of Pumping Iron in Manhattan. I'm trying to remember the year. It must have been, what was that?
77.
77, yeah. And Ed Corney guest posed, Lou Ferrigno guest posed. There was a couple others. I can't quite remember who it was. Maybe Robbie. Yeah. But when I watched Ed Corney pose, it brought that to life. It was like I knew I wanted that muscle. I know I was already compelled. This is what I wanted to do. But that was the convincer, man. Tony, like you said, when you get to see that it's more than just, even more than just an athletic endeavor, it is an art form. And it was truly that art form that had compelled me for all those years. And one of the reasons why I always ultimately wanted to be just a great poser and display that art form, you know, just as you did, Phil, and Tony, you were a master poser. Yeah. Never forget your routines as well. You know, that lat spread, good God, you know. But very similar experiences. And I'm betting Phil has something of a similar nature as well. We all, and going back to one other point, which is, you know, we all have those experiences, that trauma early in our lives in some respect. And bodybuilding for me, and obviously for you in many respects, Tony, was that it was a saving grace. It was something to focus on. It was somewhere to channel that energy, that negativity, and put it into something productive. Yes. And along the way, I think what happens to so many young bodybuilders, well, maybe not as much today, but certainly then, is if you were serious and you dedicated a little time and energy, and people could see, like in the gyms at Gold's or in Future Man, could see you were serious. You weren't just some kid that came in and wanted to get a view. You had to prove yourself. Yeah, you were proof. And then someone, for me, it was Tony Pandolfo, who was later on the Masters, Mr. America, won several titles in New York. Kind of took me under his wing. He said, "Hey, you know, you're pretty serious. You're down here. Let me teach you some stuff." And believed in the potential. When someone believes in your potential, and let's face it, we all have potential for one thing or another. Right. If someone believes in it, someone sees it and illustrates that interest in you, it can change the cards, man. The whole deck changes in many respects, doesn't it? Yeah. Amazing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Phil, who was the first guy you saw on stage or in the gym that, you know, you got that art form, or that, you know, the bodybuilder that really inspired you?
The first guy was a guy named Dave Washington. I went to school with his son. His son said, "My dad's a bodybuilder." And I've been bullied for years. I mean, from 6 years old on up, on a daily basis. I used to pay 50 cents a day for protection fees, right? So I wouldn't get beat up. So I never got to eat lunch. And I told my mom once, and she went up to the school and complained, and it got worse. Right? Because they found out that she complained, and they complained to the kids, and the kids took it out on me. So I didn't do anything. So I never talked about it after that. And another funny thing is, not too people know this, my dad was a professional boxer in the 40s and 50s. He fought on the same card with Sugar Ray Robinson. And so he had a good career, and he wanted to teach me how to box. And we go in the backyard, and we put on gloves, and he'd show me. But there were always 2 or 3 or 4 kids when they would get you. They'd get you in a corner. What are you going to do? And I was afraid to use it. So I talked to this kid, Dave. I said, who's your dad? He said, my dad's a bodybuilder. I said, what does a bodybuilder do? He goes, oh, I'll show you pictures. So he brought pictures of his father. I said, you got to introduce me to him. I said, when does he pick you up? And I waited around for his dad to pick him up. And he introduced us. And I bugged this man for 6 months to take me to the downtown YMCA. That was the only gym in Kansas City during that time. There were no gyms back then. Finally, after 6 months, he goes, Philip, he said, you still bugging me? He said, man, all right, man, meet me down there on Saturday. So I met him down there on a Saturday. He showed me the basic exercises. And from there, I started going Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And after a year, he looked at me, he said, I can't believe you're still here. He goes, you think you're serious, don't you? I said, yeah, I'm serious, David. He goes, all right. He goes, I said, I saw magazines. He gave me a bunch of magazines, old Ironmans, old Muscle Builders, and Muscle Training Illustrated magazines that were from the 70s and further back. The Ironmans went all the way back to the early 60s.
Yeah.
I discovered and found out who everybody was, read as much as I could. And then from there, I found out there was a Teenage Mr. America. So I wanted to be Teenage Mr. America when I was 17. First show I went to, he finally helped me get ready for a show, David did. And I did the Mr. Missouri Valley. It was a novice show in 77 in Kansas City. It was at the YMCA under a basketball hoop. You had the light.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Oh, yeah. The light, the hanging light.
Yeah, and I went out there with some Kmart posing trunks. Didn't shave, didn't know anything, didn't have any hair anyway, not much of it. And of course, I took 13th out of like 26 guys. About 2 months later, he goes, I'm going to St. Louis. He was training for the Mr. Missouri over 40. So he took me out there and I competed in the Mr. Missouri and took second in the short class at 17 years old, which was a big deal. And that's where I met Samir the first time and Danny Padilla. And I was introduced to George. And George, I talked to George, of course, and George, hey, kid, if you want to work out, he goes, this is the place you want to be. So I told you this story before. I used to drive Friday evening from Kansas City to St. Louis. That's like just short of 400 miles. It's 365 from border to border. And I'd sleep in my car Friday night, train Saturday evening, sleep in my car, get up Sunday morning, work out, drive 400 miles plus back to Kansas City to go to school on Monday morning. Oh. And my mother and my parents were great. My mother was liberal. She said, okay, just give me a call when you get there. Would you do that? I said, yeah, Mom, I'll call you. And that's how it started for me.
You were 17, Phil?
17 years old.
Yeah.
So it went from David, who introduced me to George. And then from there, I started driving out to Turner's gym from Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And then from there, George offered me a job. He found out I was sleeping in my car. That's where I got the name, The Enigma. He goes, that kid's crazy. He goes, what's wrong with that? He's an enigma. And I did this in the snow. You drive down, I believe it's the 405 in Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken. That was a long drive in the snow, man. And then you sleep in the car with blankets.
In the winter.
But yeah, just to be a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted it that bad. And from there, it only increased. That desire only increased from there.
Yeah.
Look at physiques back then. I mean, it was a different era altogether, of course, but they did look obtainable, but there was beauty along with symmetry, proportion, balance, deep separation, intricate detail, which is something you don't see much of today.
Right.
I mean, I respect the size you guys have, but they're so big. I never dreamt of becoming that big.
Yeah.
I trained to look like Samir and Robbie and maybe a few other guys I admired. And that, if I'd obtained that was basically obtainable in my mind. And that was my goals right there, to look like those guys.
You know, what's crazy hearing all these stories from you guys is, you know, this is back in the 70s and we didn't have all the, you know, all the advantages they have today, you know, the phones and all the gyms, you know, like you said, there was hardly any gyms around back then. You had to travel so far to get to a gym. And then when you got there, you weren't accepted. Nobody said, oh yeah, come on in, kid. You know, nobody helped you. You had to prove yourself. So it's just amazing the desire you guys had to prove yourself when there was so much going against you compared to how it is today, where we can, you know, kids today can watch anything on YouTube. They can see all these things. We never even got to see these guys that we admired. We only saw them in the magazines. We never saw them in person, you know, unless we went to Mr. Olympia or went to Gold's Gym. So it's just amazing all the things we had against us, and we still wanted it so bad. We were able to. We were willing to do anything.
I think I was too naive to understand the I don't know if to say it was dangerous to do that.
Yeah.
Me, that was just okay. I'll do it. I was
crazy. It was crazy to do it.
That's what we did.
I was happy to do all that.
Right.
They told me what to eat. It's funny because in high school, I would take cans of tuna and an apple, or hard-boiled eggs and an apple. So I was 36 eggs a day, 6 times 6, 36, 6 meals a day. And if it wasn't eggs, it was tuna.
Right.
And hard-boiled eggs. I did that for years.
I added the same thing. I added some peanut butter in there just for a little some variety.
Yeah.
Even hard-boiled eggs with peanut butter on it. You know what I mean? It's just, I need calories. You gotta get some calories. But it is interesting. I think, John, to your point, which is it's a little not a little easier. It's a lot easier today in marketing. We call it an open loop, right? An open loop is I'm going to suggest, hey, here's something you're going to learn. Here's something you want to know about. Here's something that's going to pique your interest. And you know what? We'll go back to that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's an open loop. Then I come back and close the loop. And for us, early days was the interest peaked, but we couldn't close the loop easily. So it heightened the curiosity. It heightened the desire a little bit. And we were willing to do whatever we could to find out what's on the other side of that loop. What's on the other side of these images? What's on the other side of that contest? Is this for me? Is this something I can explore and be part of? And it really drove us. And in fact, I think driving that many miles, riding my bicycle to Future Man Gym, which was, 20 miles away in the middle of winter, it created that it's like, hey, if you could do this, man, then you've got what it takes maybe to be a champion somewhere along the way. But when it's too easy, it's
the desire isn't there. Yeah.
I think we all know guys that had like the super genetics. There were guys, I knew guys certainly when I was training.
Yeah.
That, like Tony said, I didn't look like much in the gym. Never really looked like much in the gym.
Yeah.
And there were guys that were like, oh my God, freaking guy, it's genetics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But maybe it was too easy for them.
And they didn't have the desire. Yeah.
Yeah. And could never really overcome the obstacles that they needed to overcome in order to be able to really exploit what they had.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
but some guys, like I said, some guys bodies are designed for stage.
Stage physique.
And I think Frank Zane is one of those guys too. You only look good under that proper light. If the light's right, you're on point.
Yeah.
And your presentation is on point. You give the illusion of something that's not.
That illusion.
But that's structure though. That's the waist, the hips, the bone structure. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you got to have enough size to pull it off. But your condition's got to be really, really on point.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tony, I think you were really a prime example of that in many respects, because you were never that big, you know what I mean? But when you got on stage, the waist, the tiny hips, the little joint structures. I mean, how much did you? I never knew how much you would weigh, like at your peak condition. What were you?
I think at the 80, when the America's 185, I think on stage the max was about 200 maybe.
Same, exactly. I won the Nationals at 186. I was like,
wow, really?
What the hell? Yeah.
Wow.
But I look back at the picture though, man, I look pretty huge in the picture, but I didn't weigh much.
Yeah.
The bone structure
because
was so incredible.
I used to go to a chiropractor, and the guy would adjust me, and he goes, "Holy shit, you got a really small frame under all this muscle." I couldn't believe it. What the hell? How did you pack on so much muscle on a tiny little frame? So yeah. Oh, getting back to the tuna fish, I had tuna fish and coffee. My good friend Kent King threw me out of the gym one day. Go Santa Monica. That's what I was eating every day. Tuna out of the can and coffee. Get out of here, just smelling up the gym.
The gym smelled bad enough as it was.
Right.
As that tuna, man.
Tuna fish smells, yes, and coffee. I didn't have any money. I was trying to survive,
Yeah, I want to ask you guys, when you finally made it to the pro stage, and because nowadays they give out pro card, again, I'm complaining about today's days, but they give out pro cards so easily, but it was hard to get a pro card back in the 70s and 80s. So when you finally got that pro card, what was that like?
Wow.
Well, I went to I was suspended from the IFBB. As
you had a difficult time, Tony. You weren't welcome with open arms, right, to the IFBB. Not
at all. So I was starving, and this guy from Rhode Island calls me up and says, "Hey, I want you to guest pose." I was always in shape because that's who I was. Yeah. So, okay, in a couple of weeks I'll be ready. So I go to Rhode Island, I guest post at the show, and I come off stage, and this kid run backstage. He goes, "Man, you're in crazy shape. You should go to New York next week and compete for Mr. World." I go, "Okay, I'll drive you." So he drives me to New York. I'll never forget that drive because I almost died in the car. I mean, it's New York driving. Come on, it's crazy.
I'm familiar.
But he got me there. So I win Mr. World, WBBG, Dan Laurie's.
Was this after the America, Tony?
This is way after America, 78 and 1. This is late 79 now.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm really starving. I won American 78, September to like October 79. I was just sleeping on my friend's sofa.
Wow.
In his mom's house in the hood. Yeah, that's where I kind of ended up. I mean, really nothing was happening to this phone call. There's a few bucks to be made. So I guess pose, the guy drives me to New York, and I won the world, WBBG and Loris, yes. And then, but you get a free pass to go to London if you win. So that's how I turned pro. That was my pro show, the first one.
Because after you won the America, Tom Platz beat you for that American team. So then he won the IFBB Universe. So what was your plan after that America, Tony? After that happened?
I didn't have a plan. Like I said, I never had a plan.
Yeah.
But
the only thing you could do was go back the next year, right, and try and get on the team. Isn't that what you had to do?
Yes, but I got suspended way before then.
Oh, you did.
What happened was I was starving, and then I was sleeping behind a church, and this guy, says, "Hey, my friends in South America want you to guest pose down there." And I go, "Okay," down in Belize. So I fly down there. I get to the hotel, and this is in the book, of course. And the guy at the desk says, "Hey, here's a telegram." Back in those days, there were telegrams. So I open the telegram. It's a letter from Ben Weeder, and he goes, "If you post tomorrow, you're getting a life suspension."
Jeez.
Was it a non-IFBB sanctioned show, Tony?
Yes, that's right. And the guy, the promoter told me, he says, non-sanctioned IFBB. Would you do it? I'm starving, man. I need money. I got to eat. So I go on stage, and there is a life suspension now. So that's how it all. So yeah, I turned pro at that show in New York. Now I'm suspended. Can't guest pose anywhere IFBB or at seminars or anything.
Yeah.
So I went to London, and I got second in Lulu from Turkey.
Yeah.
Universe.
Yeah.
79. Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember seeing pictures of that.
Yeah,
but then I look back and I go, he's been there many years before, and it was my first time there. So
yeah,
I think his time was was up. You know what I mean? Even though we had a tremendous crazy pose down with toe to toe.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Going crazy. But I go, okay, you got it. All right. So, but then a year later, so now I'm pro, and a year later I'm in Paris. Now I was in Germany, and then Newbray said to me, he says, you're already in Europe, and you're in great shape. Why don't you go back to London and try to pull it off again? So I won the Pro Universe.
Okay.
But to get the pro card, I mean, it was a lot of work, but I had a lot of obstacles in my way. It wasn't just, I didn't have any contracts. There's no endorsements. The phone didn't ring.
Yeah.
Nothing. I went homeless again. I won Mr. America, and I was homeless.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
That's not surprising, but amazing.
Yeah.
That can happen to anybody.
People don't know that I was actually starving again. And then, but the letdown, because I said to myself, I win Mr. America, man, I made it. I got to have the contract, this and that.
Yeah, yeah.
I got zero. And I can never explain it. I cannot figure it out. Even today, I cannot figure it out. Even though they said I should not have won, but I still won. Just because you're the champ, you still should get, there's a lot of shows people say you shouldn't have won.
Right.
You got lucky, or, it's
Yeah.
always like that.
It's like they blamed you for winning the show.
Yes, they blame me. I got all.
You had nothing to do with it.
That's right. I got the rap for it.
Right.
And then I was punished throughout all my shows in IFBB ever since that.
Jeez, unbelievable. So when did you go over to the IFBB? 83, like?
No, I wrote a letter. So that was 78. So 81, I wrote a letter to Ben.
Okay.
Because my friend, Kent Keene,
Mm-hmm.
good friend of mine, he said, you need to write a letter to Ben. I was hanging out in LA doing doing the LA thing. I was young and crazy. I go, really? Okay. So I wrote 2 lines. Ben, I apologize. And then he sent me a letter back and he said, it's okay, you're reinstated. Yes.
Wow, just from a letter. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm back. But there was a catch to this letter though. I didn't realize. So I'm back in the IFBB, and Arnold, I saw him in the Rose Cafe, and he said to me, why don't you go to Australia, Mr. Universe, IFBB, first show for me. I'm excited. Go down there and win something for a change. So I fly out. I go to Australia, backstage, pumping up, feeling good. And then someone came over to me and he said, you're never going to win. Just like that. You'll always place top 5, always make money, but you're never going to win. And he walked away. So this is just before I go on stage. Imagine what that's doing to your head.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So there's only one picture that I've seen from that show where I'm looking up to God going, why? There's a picture and I'm looking to heaven. So I come 3rd. And it proved true. So I look back on my career now and I go, he was right.
Didn't you win one though, Tony, in Portland or something?
One.
Yeah.
Denver.
Okay. Yeah.
Remember those Grand Prix shows?
Yeah. I remember.
Denver in 83, 80, and then 1 week later, I'm in Portland, Oregon, and guess who showed up?
Who?
Joe Weider. Comes backstage, looks at me. You really want to win, huh? Exact words. I'm young, I'm pumping up, getting ready to go on stage. You know how your mind said you got to go on stage. I go, yeah, Joe, of course I want to win. I was really, really in shape. This is 83, 84.
Yeah.
I'm diehard shape. And I go, of course I want to win. I'm intense. I came 2nd.
Oh.
So, yeah, this is facts. And then I go, okay, Australia, he was right. And so the rest of the time, I knew what's going to happen before I even show up. But I make sure I was in 100% conditioning because that got me seminars that would give me guest posing.
Yeah.
And I was using the Michael Jackson thing. So I said, just show up in shape, do your best, no matter what, keep smiling. And then the phone's going to ring. Get some guest posing out of it. And most of the promoters that all those shows, they always invited me because they know I'm going to pose. And they know I'm in shape.
Right.
So that's how it all played out. Yes, I got reinstated, but there were strings attached.
Yeah. What about you, Tom, when you turned pro?
Well, it's interesting because I had a similar story the year before at the Nationals at the I think it was Phil. It was you that won the light heavy overall, and I was 2nd. And I think was it Moses Maldonado that was 3rd?
No, it was JJ Marsh.
JJ, where did Moses place in that? Was he 4th? He
placed 4th. He was 4th.
4th. And so that year, I remember, and I was feeling good. You and I, you remember the experience. It was like they called us out, comparisons, and never called us out again.
Never called us back.
It was the most unusual prejudging I've ever experienced or ever seen, Yeah. And so I felt really good going into the night show. Of course, I had everybody say, hey, Phil, looks great. It's going to be a battle. And I wanted that battle. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then Moses, as I'm pumping up, getting ready to go out to my routine, that night show, Moses come up. He says, man, you look really good. Congratulations. I just got the word from the judges. You're 2nd. I hadn't even got Literally, I said to myself, you son of a bitch. That is not freaking cool at all, right? So anyway, that was my experience that year, and Phil took it, and he justifiably deserved it without question. So the next year, and I had momentum because I was 3rd in the light heavies, then 2nd to Phil, and next year won the light heavyweight division, earning the pro card. And so it was, and I knew going into that 3rd national championship that this is it. I've got the momentum. If I backslide now, it's going to be impossible to pull myself out of it. So I had to go there in great shape. I had to be ready. And I knew, and it was interesting because that was the year And again, you know, as Tony was talking about, we've all got these demons, we've all got this past, and we've all got these struggles internally. And it was like, as I was approaching this idea that I'm going to be a champion, this is going to be my year, this is the one. There was also something else going on below the surface on an unconscious level that was telling me, you're not a champion, you're not good, you're one of the 1%ers, you're not really part of all that, you can't be a champion, you'll never be good enough for that. Right. So I had this internal battle going on with myself. And I had mentioned my early mentor from when I was a teenager at Future Man Gym, Tony Pandolfo. And I'd had great training partners leading up to this all these years. You don't get that far without really good people pushing and shoving and encouraging you along the way and making you do those extra reps that you don't really want to do. But I called Tony out of the blue like 2 months before because I couldn't get my head into it. And, you know, you got to be training. It's at minimum 12 weeks to prepare, you know what I mean? And I'm now like 8 weeks out and I'm not ready and it's not happening. I couldn't get my head into it. I called Tony and so I get him on the phone. I said, Tony, you know my situation. It's third, second, the momentum's with me this year. I can make it happen, but I can't get my head. He said, don't say another word. He said, be in the gym tomorrow at 6 a.m. And sure enough, for the next 8 weeks, we trained together and he just freaking annihilated me. I mean, I've never trained so hard, so intent, and so focused. He demanded my head be there. I had no choice.
Yeah.
To be there. You know what I mean? And it really taught me a powerful lesson. At that point, I was ready to win. I was ready to turn pro. And it was because of that experience, because of overcoming that fear, that doubt, that uncertainty, that the past I was dragging from the past with me, that I was able to do that and ultimately win that pro card. But I'll tell you what, it was an elating moment, especially going up against the competition. I had Mike Ashley, was brilliant, and what a great physique, and JJ Marsh, of course, and some of the other guys. I mean, it was just an incredible competition. So to be able to do that night, and of course, I was more than happy to not win the overall to the incredible Gary Stridham, who just looked brilliant that night himself and was in great shape. But it was an experience. And then, of course, after turning pro, you know, we kind of, like Tony, it's just like we kind of have these expectations that all this stuff, it's all going to happen now.
Yeah, right.
It's all coming on my way. You know what I mean? It's just like,
I've made it.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, we wasn't giving out contracts to people left and right.
Right. There was no money.
You know? I always had great posing routines. So like Tony, I got invited to do a lot of guest posings, which kept me in fairly good shape. Probably also kept me from getting a little thicker and a little bigger over the course of the next year. My first pro show was Night of the Champions in 87, I think it was 87. Yeah, and I think I took 6th that year, and I was disappointed because it was in Night of the Champions. I'd been to Night of the Champions several times as a spectator. It was my home turf, you know what I mean? It's in New York, and talk about entourage. I mean, I had already built 2 gyms. I had 2 big gyms back in Long Island. They were successful, so we had all this like entourage. Like half the audience was there to kind of like encourage me, and then I got beat. And it's like, hey, what are you going to do, man? But
hey, Tom, let me ask you a question. Why did you have that doubt 8 weeks out from the Nationals? Was it just the pressure, you think?
No, I think it was because there was something else going on below the surface that was telling me, as I got closer to being a champion, to winning the goal that I had for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
As I was getting closer to that, there was something else going on below the surface that was saying, you're not good enough for that. You'll never be that guy, whoever I put up on the pedestal as Mr. America, National Bodybuilding Champion, Mr. Olympia, whoever those guys were that I had up on the pedestal at that time. Yeah. You'll never be that guy. You're not good enough for that. And it wasn't about me not being good enough physique-wise. It was just me not being good enough, period. Not having, you know, whether it was earning the stripes or not, it was all, and a lot of that comes from, like Tony, having a sordid, you know, childhood, growing up with some discouragement and some frustrations and doubts, and you know my story, turning those doubts, fears, and uncertainties into, you know, a short-lived career as an outlaw biker. That was the manifestation of it, and then ultimately breaking free of that, and then it starts to show up. Those things, as Tony said, we carry those things life. They're with us forever.
They don't go away.
Visit your home, visit your hometown, visit your old school, visit whatever those experiences were. They come up. Yeah. You know, I mean, and we may have suppressed them a little bit. I call it the dragon. We can push the dragon back into its dark lair, But at those given moments, they'll show up. And for me, it was showing up about 8 weeks. It showed up before that, which is why it took 4 or 5 weeks for me to realize, holy shit, I can't get on track here.
Yeah.
Something's not right. So I finally realized that. And I think an important lesson for me was, and I wrote about this in 7 Rules of Achievement, is know what your resources are and have the ability to be able to reach out to those resources, the humility to reach out for those resources when they're there. And reaching out to Tony Pandolfo was the greatest resource I ever exercised in my life. It was the savior, you know? So that's my story about turning pro. But it was, man, after all those years of trying, you know what I mean? And like, boom, this is it. So
yeah.
it was fantastic. It was a great experience, no question.